It's Longrider again. I've created another one of these desired talent trees in wartools.com, and I'd like some feedback on it. I've created it in response to the Ninja and Fluffy builds that MMO Champion was so kind to document for us. There were some changes in those that I did like, some changes that I didn't. Probably the most poignant change that I loved was the fact that Exorcism no longer has a cooldown. It has essentially become the Paladin equivalent of Smite or Wrath. It's not a new button to click per se, but oh well. And it's available all the way down at level 9. That should certainly make leveling a lot more fun. Anyhow, before I show you the trees, I should tell you that my trees operate under the assumption that Judgment baseline has a range of 40 yards, and that Shield of Righteousness is now a trainable ability. I figured, why not? Besides protection builds, the only classes that are ever going to use it are Healadins while they're soloing. Why not give them a damage ability to spend holy power on? Anyhow, on to the changes in my trees. You can tell I've done a lot of reshuffling. I'll go through the talents one by one. First off, I made Arbiter of the Light affect Holy Light again. Without Holy Light in there, that talent really doesn't help Holy at all. I also changed it to affect Exorcism's crit chance instead of Judgment's, since Judgment's crit chance is now being taken care of in a different talent. I'll get to that later. I moved Eternal Glory into Holy, more or less switching it with Judgments of the Pure. I also changed Eternal Glory so that it buffs the amount that Word of Glory heals, as well as granting a chance that it won't consume holy power. That no-cost effect is pretty much secondary at this point. Since Blizzard moved Conviction into Holy, I figured it would be better placed shallow in the tree than deep in the tree, for the same reason that I liked Conviction shallow in Ret, so I moved it to Tier 2. To make room for that, I moved Clarity of Purpose, which was essentially a Holy-only talent, deeper in the tree. And I'd like to say that I like the fact that Clarity's icon is the old Blessing of Wisdom icon. That was a neat icon, and it's very Paladinish, and I'm glad they didn't let it go away. Also, in my trees, Illumination is back. I didn't like to see it go. Of course, since mana restoration mechanics are completely different in Cataclysm from what they are in Live, Illumination might not be necessary. I ended up removing the Speed of Light talent. I felt like its Holy Shock effect was redundant with Infusion of Light, its cooldown lowering effect was put into a different talent, and its sprint effect didn't quite seem worthwhile. I considered merging it with Long Arm of the Law, but decided not to. I've renamed Enlightened Judgments Enlightened Combat. Now it heals both you and your beacon. I also tacked something onto that talent that increased the damage of Crusader Strike and Shield of Righteousness, based on your spell power. If you remember back in the Burning Crusade, originally Crusader Strike did have a spell power coefficient. I figured that giving it one again, at least as a talent, would be very helpful for Holy. I also attached a Telluric Currents-like effect to Denounce. It feels like Denounce is making Exorcism viable for Healadins by lowering its mana cost, so I figured that a talent that both makes it viable and makes it profitable was a very good way to go. As with my earlier trees, the Telluric Currents-like effect is essentially that you gain mana when you cast spells on a target affected by Judgment. That seems like a very Paladinish approach. On to the Protection tree. You may notice that I changed the icon for Protector of the Innocent. The official icon Blizzard is using is a rather wooden-looking mallet that's glowing purple. It looks nice enough standing alone, but when you put it next to all those other talents that have hammers for them, yeah, it looks like it's just too much hammers. So I decided to use Warcraft 3's old Devotion Aura icon. That's right, that's what the old Devotion Aura icon looked like. It isn't a glowing shield, it's a glowing glove. I also buffed the effect on healing to 6%. 3% is just not worth it when you compare it to other talents. And it affects Concentration Aura as well as Devotion Aura. I renamed the improved Hammer of Justice talent to Swift Justice, and it lowers the cooldown of Hammer of Justice, Holy Radiance, Divine Sacrifice, Divine Protection, and Zealotry. All of those are sizable cooldowns and have different uses for different builds. I wanted to make it attractive to both other specs as well as Protection. I moved Hallowed Ground down to Tier 2 and had its effect on Consecration slightly nerfed, and now it also buffs Holy Radiance, Divine Storm, and Light of Dawn. I changed the focus for off-speccing into Protection from previous builds that I generated with War Tools, in that now Protection is more into AoE if you're off-speccing into it. I added a completely new talent to Tier 2 in Protection as well. I called it Divine Power and gave it Divine Strength's old icon. It boosts Strength and Spirit by 6%. It seems nice and not too powerful. I moved Wrath of the Lightbringer down to Tier 2 and slightly lowered the crit chance attached to it. Now that boosts Judgment's crit chance instead of Arbiter of the Light. I reshuffled Sacred Duty down to Tier 3, and here's the reason why. Since I wanted to make room for more versatile talents on Tier 2, I moved Toughness to Tier 3, but then it occurred to me that too many must-have talents were on Tier 3 at that point. Sacred Duty looked like it was a bit more optional, so I switched it with Toughness. That puts Toughness on tier 6, and that's pretty deep, considering that talent has been historically shallow in every tree it's ever been in, but I figured that Toughness was a must-have, so I lowered the talent point cost and pushed it deeper in the tree. Judgments of the Just felt like it was a protection-only thing as well, so I put it in tier 3. I feel like the way I set up Protection needs the most feedback from other more experienced players. And now for Retribution. Improved Judgment is gone because I folded it into the ability baseline. I changed Eye for an Eye so that it affects physical attacks too, though not as much as magic attacks. I still wanted it to be nice for protection. I also moved Judgments of the Pure into tier 1 ret. It seemed like it made a little bit more sense in Retribution than it did in Holy. The real reason it doesn't make sense in Holy and Blizzard's trees is that it's more or less useless for Healodins unless they off-spec into ret. Divine Purpose looked like it could be used by any build, so I moved it down to tier 2. I slightly lowered the chance for it to proc too, and added more abilities to the list. This and my next change really require a lot of feedback. The next change is bringing back an old talent, Benediction. Originally that talent lowered the mana cost of seal spells, and then later it reduced the cost of all instant spells. But in my tree, it behaves quite a bit differently. It's kind of like a buffer against random holy power procs or situations where you can't spend the holy power right away. If you're already at full holy power and then an effect gives you even more, then you get a buff that gives you holy power a few seconds later. I'm really not sure about this one, so please give me a lot of feedback on it. Moving right along, I changed Long Arm of the Law so that it also gives you a sprint if you use Rebuke on a ranged target, and yes, Rebuke now has a range, 30 yards on it. Pursuit of Justice seemed like it was a Retribution-only thing, so I moved it deeper in the tree to tier 5. I also added an effect to Acts of Sacrifice. This is the same as what was in my previous trees, in that it also affects Hand of Sacrifice, and it also absorbs more damage and you get hit with less damage from it. These trees aren't perfect, but I think that they're my best work yet. I could use some feedback on them, so please have a look at them and let me know what you think.